So hello and welcome back. So before we begin the today's sessions, let's quickly recap what we learned in our last session. Okay. So we covered business continuity, high availability, disaster recovery, Azure backup, recovery service board, Azure site recovery, ability set, ability zones, and Azure load balancer and Azure front door. Okay. So most importantly, we learned the great architecture doesn't just recover from the failure. They detect problems from user even notice them. Okay. So this is naturally lead us to another critical Azure architecture responsibility, that is monitoring, observability, governance, and operation excellence. Okay. So why the today topic matters? So imagine you are responsible for a global Azure environment. Okay, and the resource included the 500 virtual machine, AKS cluster, Azure SQL databases, storage account, and app services, and also network component. So now the question arises: how do you know a VM is running out of the memory? Okay, and a database is becoming slow, and application is throwing expectations and exceptions, and Azure storage account is nearly capacity, or someone accidentally delete a resource and security threat are occurring. Okay, so without monitoring, problems goes to customer
Mm,
discovery them first. Okay, but with the proper
yeah,
observability, it start with problem, then it goes to Azure detect them, then alert sent, and then engineers respond. So this is a
yeah,
foundation of the operational excellence. Okay, so
absolutely.
so now what is the learning objective? So by the end of this session, you will able to see, understand the Azure environment architecture, design enterprise observability solutions, understand Azure Monitor, differentiate metrics, logs, and traces, understand the log analytics workspace, and prepare for the AZ-305 monitoring questions, and
Mm,
also like think like an Azure architect. Okay, so now let's start today first subtopic or topic. So let me write here in chat. Okay, so our first topic of the day is monitoring. Okay, fundamental
mm,
Azure Monitor. Okay,
mhm.
matrices, logs, and observability principle. Okay, so these are our first topic. Now, so imagine you are a Azure architect for a multinational bank. Okay, and application include internet banking, ATM service, mobile banking, payment gateway, and identity platform. So one morning, customer complain, website slow, transactions delayed, and login failure. So now the question arises: which server is causing the issue? Is database over workload? Is network congested? Did deployment introduce the error, or is this is a cyber attack? Okay, so without monitoring, finding the root cause become extremely difficult. Okay, so now here is come, what is monitoring? What is monitoring?
Mm,
So monitoring means continuously collection. Okay, information.
yeah.
Okay, okay. So
I
look
can't
here.
see the drawing.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, can
So
you zoom the
see,
drawing, please?
I will show you. Don't worry.
Okay,
So
okay.
first, see what is monitoring. So Azure Monitor maximize the ability and perform of the application by delivering a comprehensive solution for collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry. Okay. So if I simplify, monitoring means continuously collecting the information about the system. Okay. For example, CPU uses, okay, and memory uses, disk uses, network traffic, applications errors, and availability. Okay, so monitoring answer what is happening right now. Okay, very fundamental. Okay, and what is observability? So one of the most important modern concept means observability is understanding why. Okay, why the something happened. Okay, and monitoring tell us something is wrong, and observability tell us why it is wrong. Okay, so let me write here. Monitoring means continuously collecting information. Okay, about the systems. Okay, and what is observability? So observability means understanding the understanding why something happened. Okay,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
these are basic difference of monitoring and observability. Okay, so now let's give you some uh, points. So basically monitoring tells us something is wrong. Okay, and observability tell us what, why it is wrong. Okay, now so for example let's take for monitoring. So CPU is equal to 98%. Okay, so in this case what observability explains, it explains new deployment. Okay, and database queries. Okay, and memory leak. Okay, so root cause undefined. So there are three pillars of the observability, which is very important concept. Okay, now yeah, so the modern observability relies on the matrices, logs, and traces. Okay, three pillars of observability are: first one is matrices. Okay, second one is to write here second one is logs. Okay, and third one is your traces. These are three pillars of the observability, and together they provide complete visibility. Okay, So let's take pillar one, that is matrices. So matrices are numerical measurement. For example, CPU percentage, memory percentage, disk user, network throughput, request count. Okay. So matrices answer how healthy is the system. Okay. And their characteristics is lightweight, fast, time series data, excellent for the dashboard. For example, CPU is 25%, then goes to the memory 60%, then goes to the disk 40%. And what about the pillar 2, that is log? So logs record the detailed events. For example, applications started, user logged in, API failed, VM restarted, and authentication failed. So log answer what exactly happened. Okay. For example, let's take at 10 10:05 a.m. user logged in failed, reason invalid token. Okay, so much detail when the matrices. And what is the pillar 3, which is traces? So traces follow a single request across the multiple services. For example, it starts from the user request, then go to the API gateway, then goes to app services, then go to database, then goes to storage. So useful for the microservices. Okay, for example, customer click, okay, buy now. Traces allow front end. For example, let me with example of traces. Okay, suppose customer clicks buy now button. Okay, so in this process, trace follows. What is start from front end, then it goes to API, then it goes to payment service. Okay, then it goes to inventory, then it goes to database. Okay, so these are example of traces. So which shows where delay occur. And what are the Azure monitoring architecture? So Azure uses a centralized monitoring platform, and its architectures look like Azure monitoring architecture look like. To start with Azure resource. Okay, then goes to Azure Monitor. Then it goes to a combination of what? Matrices, then logs, then alerts, then dashboard. Okay. Now, so Azure Monitor is a central monitoring services. So what is Azure Monitor? So Azure Monitor is Azure central monitoring platform which collect the matrices, log, alerts, diagnosis data, activity logs from the Azure resources. And what are the Azure Monitor data workflow look like? So it start with the Azure resources, then go to Azure Monitor, then goes to dashboard, alerts, log analytics. Okay. And what are the data resources? So Azure Monitor collect data from the virtual machine, AKS, storage, Azure SQL, networking, app services, keyboard. Okay, so almost every service is integrated with the Azure Monitor. Okay, and what are the types of the data collected? It's a platform matrices. For example, CPU, memory, I/O, PS, network, which is collected automatically. And what are the activity logs? So it's record the management operation. For example, resource created, resource deleted, role assigned, policy changed, and useful for the auditing. Okay, now what are the management operations? Sorry, what are the diagnosis logs? So it provides the resource specific information. For example, firewall log, your storage log, your SQL logs, your application log. So now what is the Azure Monitor component? So there are key components include the matrices, log, alert, dashboard, insight, and let me write here. Azure Monitor component. Okay, it is matrices, then logs, then alerts, then dashboard, then insights. Okay, so these are Azure Monitor components. Okay, so we will explore each in the detail through this part. Okay, so what are the monitoring life cycles? So it's typically the workflow look like it's collect data, then goes to the analyze, then go to the detect problem, then alert, then investigate, then resolve. Okay, so monitoring,
Okay. When they collect the data,
yeah.
what is the data used for? When it gets to database, what do they use it for? I mean, they've made payments, they've done the inventory,
So it's
so
it's basically
we
depend
just
like
store the
which,
data.
no, it's depend which kind of data company are using. Okay, like if
Okay.
the if the company, if the company is of a streaming website like Netflix, so they are using data of their photos, videos, okay, movies. Okay, if the company is a
Mm.
financial company like banking system, so they have the data of the customer records, their transaction
Yeah.
records. Okay, so data
Mm.
are varied. They are depend upon the uh, uh,
Usage.
employer or industry or a company. Okay, like which,
Okay.
in
Yeah.
which category they are following. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
so monitoring life cycle will be look like it start from collect,
Mm-hmm.
collect your data, then goes to analyze,
Okay.
then it goes to detect problem. Okay, then it goes to alert, then it goes to investigate, then it goes to resolve. Simple. So
Mm.
these are monitoring life cycle. Okay, please keep taking the notes, okay, from the chat. So what are
Yeah.
the real world enterprise scenarios? So global retail company, let's suppose, having the monitoring requirement like CPU monitoring, fail logging detections, storage capacity alert, so SQL queries, and network latency. So Azure Monitor provides a centralized solutions. So what are the monitoring and what is monitoring versus logging? So very common interview questions. So in monitoring, current health showing, but in logging, the historical detail. Matrices come under the monitoring, but events come under the logging. Dashboard come under the monitoring, and investigation come under the logging. Alerts come under the monitoring, and root cause analysis come under the logging. Okay, and what are the monitoring versus observability? So detect issues come under the monitoring, and explain issues comes under observability. Health status come under the monitoring, and root causes come under the observability. Matrices come under the monitoring, and matrices log plus stress comes under the observability. Okay, so what are the enterprise observability architectures look like? So it will be look like observability architecture flow look like it start from Azure resources. Okay, then it goes to Azure Monitor, then it goes to log analytics. Okay, then it goes to dashboard, then it goes to alerts. Okay, then it goes to operations team to detect and solve the problem. Okay, so these are the observability architecture flow look like. Okay, so why the architects care about the monitoring? So without monitoring, long outage, slow troubleshooting, poor customer experience, and SLA variations. But with the observability, faster detections, faster diagnosis, better performance, improved reliability. And okay, so these are the architecture flow of the observability. Okay, now what are the common mistakes? So no alerting, collect the log but never reviewing them, no dashboard strategy, excessive log retentions, ignoring the fail authentication events, no operational ownership. Okay, and what are the best practices? Centralized monitoring, define actionable alert, monitor business critical workloads, build excessive dashboards, and implement the observability and review monitoring and regularly, and continuous optimize the alert threshold. Okay, now let's take some AZ-305 exam perspective. Okay, and let's take some scenarios. So suppose there is need of centralized monitoring, okay, across the Azure resources. So your answer will be always Azure Monitor. And if the scenario asks need historical investigation of the application failure, then your answer is logs. And if the scenario 3 or scenario looks like need a real time CPU utilization graph, so answer will be your matrices. And if this another scenarios need end to end request visibility across the microservices, then answer will be your distributed traces. Okay, so now there is some interview questions which might be asked in the interview, like what is Azure Monitor, what is the difference between the monitoring and observability, what are the three pillars of the observability, what is the difference between the matrices and log, what are the traces, how does Azure Monitor collect data, how would you monitor a production's Azure environment, and how do you design an enterprise observability platform. Okay, so basically monitoring is a nervous system of a cloud platform. Without it, organizations operate blindly, often discovering the problem only after the customer are affected. Okay, but modern Azure environment require more than basic monitoring. They require observability. By combining the matrices, log, and traces, architects can detect issue quickly, identify the root cause, and reduce the recovery time. Okay, so Azure Monitor serves as a foundation for operational excellence by providing the centralized visibility into every layer of the Azure solutions. Okay, so now in next session we will dive into the Azure Monitor powerful capabilities, including alerts, actions group, matrices explorer, and log analytics workspace, which enable the proactive monitoring and automated operational responses. Okay, so our next topic is design Azure Monitoring Alert, Actions Group, Matrix Explorer, and Log Analytics Workspace. So, in our previous topic, we learned about the monitoring fundamental, observability, Azure Monitor Architecture, matrices, log, and trace. So, now let's answer an important architecture questions. If CPU suddenly reach 95%, how will the operations team know? Or if a virtual machine goes down at 2 a.m. in night, who get notified? Or
Hmm.
how do we investigate what happened yesterday? So
Hmm.
Azure Monitor provide these capabilities through the Matrices
Okay.
Explorer, Alert, Action Group, and Log Analytics workspace. So these are among the most frequent tested topic in your AZ-305. Okay.
Okay.
So now let's suppose imagine you are a cloud architect. Okay, for a multinational bank. Okay, and their infrastructures has 500 virtual machines, AKS cluster, Azure SQL, storage accounts, and load balancer. And the business requirement is detect failure automatically, notify engineers immediately, investigate the root cause quickly, and Azure Monitor provide the solution. So
Hmm.
as I said, what are the Azure Monitor architecture? So it starts from Azure resources, then goes to Azure Monitor, then it's a combination of matrices, log, alerts, action group, and log analytics workspace. So everything resolved around the Azure Monitor. Okay, so what are the Azure matrices? So matrices provide the near real-time numerical data. For example, your CPU percentage, memory percentage, disk queue, network throughput, request count, or availability. So matrices are lightweight and ideal for the dashboard and alerting. And what are the matrices characteristics? It's the fast collections, time series data, near real time, low storage requirement. Okay. Now what are the VM matrices? So CPU, memory, and disk. So operation team immediately see the resource health. Now what are the matrices explorer? So one of the most important commonly used Azure Monitor tools. What is Matrix Explorer? So Matrix Explorer is a Azure virtualization tool for the matrices, which allow the engineer to view graph, compare resource, analyze trends, and pin dashboard. Okay, for example, monitor the CPU uses over which, so over the last hour, over the last day, over the last week, and over the last month. So trend analyze become easy. Okay, and what are the matrices explorer architectures look like? So let me write here. Matrices explorer architecture look like Azure resource. Okay, then it goes to matrices. Okay, then it goes to matrices explorer. Then it goes to dashboard.
Okay.
Okay, so these are matrices explorer architecture workflow. Okay, now Azure alert. So one of the most important Azure Monitor features, alert. So what is alert? So alert means automatically notify. Okay, when defined condition occurs. For example, if CPU is less more than 90% for 10 minutes, Azure Monitor triggers what? It's trigger alerts. And why alert matter? So without alert, problem is started and customer discover it, which is very big problem. Okay. So
Okay.
but with alert, problem is started, then it goes to Azure detect, then it notify the engineer, then issue resolve. No one can detect it. Customer can't detect it. You can resolve
Yeah.
the all problem in backend with the help of alert. So that's the beauty of alert. And what are the alert component? So every alert include signal. Okay, let me write here so you have a
Okay.
note. So alert component. What is alert component? Signal. Okay,
Yeah.
condition, threshold, and action. Okay. Now, what is signal? So what Azure monitors is signal, like CPU, memory, availability, custom logs, activity logs. And what is the conditions? For example, if CPU is more than 85, this is condition. And what is threshold? For example, for 50 minutes, CPU is more than 85%, that is conditions. But for 15 minutes, that is threshold. Okay. And what is action?
Okay.
Email, SMS, webhook, logic app, and Azure function. So these are actions. So
Yeah.
now, what is alert workflow? So it starts from matrix, then goes to threshold exceeded, and it alert the trigger alerted. Okay. And it goes to the action group and then goes to operation team and they will fix it. Okay, let me write here. Alert flow look like, it start with matrices, then it goes to threshold, okay, then it goes to where? Alert triggered, then it goes to action group, then it goes to operational team. Okay, so these are your alert workflow. Okay, got it. Now, what types of Azure alert? So there is like matrix alerts based on the CPU, memory, disk, network, faster and near real time. Log alert based on log queries, for example, failed login attempts more than 100. Activity log alert triggered by the management operations, for example, VM detected, role assigned, policy change. Service health alert triggered by the Azure platform events, for example, regional outage, plant maintenance, and service incidents. Azure Actions Group, very important interview topic. Okay, now what is Actions Group? What happened after an alert trigger? So this is the action group. For example, if CPU is above 90%, action group will be it goes to the it goes to the email, it goes to the team via email, then SMS engineer create the ITSM ticket and trigger the logic app. So action group architecture look like it start from alert, then goes to action group, then it's a combination of email, SMS, logic app, webhook. Okay, and what are the benefits? So centralized notification, reusable actions, faster response, operational consistency. Okay, now what is log analytic workspace? So if you see here, log analytics workspace is centralized repository for the data in Azure. It integrates the telemetry from the multiple resources like virtual machine, PaaS, intra-ID, security center into a unified queryable store, and data is required using the Costo query language, which is KQL, a powerful read-only query language that enables the rapid analysis across the billions of the records to the pinpoint operation issues or the security threat. Okay, so if I simplify what is log analytic workspace, so one of the high, so it is the one of the important part of your Azure resource. So log analytics workspace is central repository for logs centralized by the Azure Monitor. Okay, let me again repeat. What is the log analytics workspace? So log analytics workspace is central repository for logs collected by the Azure Monitor. Okay, think of it is as enterprise log database. So why do we need it? So organizations generate the millions of the log entries, need centralized log storage. So log analytics architectures look like it starts from Azure resource, then goes to Azure Monitor, then goes to log analytic workspace. Okay, and in which the data is stored. For example, VM log, AKS log, firewall logs, SQL logs, activity log, and secure logs. And there is also
Okay.
centralized monitoring instead of VM logs, SQL logs, storage logs, which spread the across the systems, and everything is stored centrally. Okay, and what are the
Okay.
querying logs? So log analytics use the Costo query language, which is KQL. For example, find the failed logging. Okay, so search for the authentication failure. Find the high CPU virtual machines. So you just type CPU more than 90%. So KQL is heavy used by Azure administrator and architect. Okay, now yeah. Now, what is dashboard? So Azure Monitor dashboard display the matrices, log, alerts, ability, and performance. Executives and operations teams use them daily. So what is the monitoring workflow look like? It start from resources, then goes to matrices, then goes to log, then go to Azure Monitor, then goes to alert, then go to actions group, then goes to engineers, then goes to log analytics and investigations for completing the monitoring life cycle. Okay. Now, what are the common mistakes? So creating too many alerts fatigue, no action group, collecting log without retention planning, no dashboard strategy, never reviewing the alerts, and what are the best practices? So create a actionable alert, reuse the action groups, centralize the logs, build operations dashboards, regular tune alert threshold, monitor the business critical workload first, and review the monitoring costs periodically. Okay, now let's take some exam perspective scenario. So if CPU exceed 90%, notify the operation team automatically, then answer will be matrix alert plus action group. And if the scenario need centralized storage and querying of the Azure logs, then answer will be log analytics workspace. And if the scenario needs to investigate the fail logging over the last 30 days, then answer will be log analytics workspace using AQ. And if the scenario asks need for notifications when an Azure subscription resolves is deleted, so answer will be activity log alerts. And if the scenario look like there is need to be informed about the Azure regional service outage, then answer will be service health alert. Okay. So now,
Mhm.
so basically, Azure Monitor is a far more than a dashboard. It is the operational backbone of the Azure environment, providing the visibility into the resource health, performance, and security. So matrices help us to detect issue quickly, while log analytics enable the deep investigation using KQL. Alerts and action group ensure the right people are notified automatically. Okay, and reducing the response time and improving the operational reliability. So as an cloud architect, okay, we should avoid creating the excessive alert instead of focusing on the meaningful actionable alert that align with the business priority and operational process. Okay,
Okay.
so now in next session we will explore the application insight, Azure Advisor, Microsoft
Mm.
Defender for cloud and Azure Policy service that help optimize the performance and strengthen the security and enforce the governance across the enterprise Azure environment. Okay, so in our previous topic or current topic, which have just now we covered, so we learned Azure Monitor, Matrices Explorer, Alerts, Actionable Group, Log Analytics, Workspace, and KQL. So monitoring tell us infrastructure health, resource performance, and operational status. But Azure iTech also answer question like why the application slow, which API is failing, are there security vulnerabilities, are Azure resource compliant with the company policy, how can infrastructure be optimized. So Azure provides four powerful services for these challenges. Let me write
Okay.
here for you.
Yes, please.
So the first one is Azure Application Insight. Okay. And second one is Azure Advisor. And third one is Microsoft Defender for cloud. Then fourth one is Azure Policy. So these are what? These are four powerful services from the Azure cloud. Okay, and which is very heavily tested in Azure AZ-305 exam and are used daily in enterprise Azure environment. Okay, so let's imagine you are Azure ad tech for a global e-commerce platform. An application has a website, mobile API, payment service, inventory system, recommendations engines. So business requirement is detect slow API, improve the performance, secure workload, enforce the governance, and optimize the Azure cost. So Azure provide detected service for the each objective. So what is Azure application insights? Okay. So here if you see application insight in Azure application performance management APM service, it provides a deep diagnosis for live web apps backend service. Okay, so if I simplify, Applications Insight is Application Performance Monitoring, which is APM, and it focuses on applications, not on infrastructure. Okay. So what is Azure Monitor versus Application Insight? So in Azure Monitor, there is infrastructure, but in Application Insight, there is applications. VM health come under the Azure Monitor. Application health
Mm.
come under the Application Insight. CPU come under the Azure Monitor, and request durations come under the Application Insight. Memory comes under the Azure Monitor, and API performance comes under the Application Insight. And platform monitoring comes under the Azure Monitor and Application Insight. There is application monitoring. Okay. So why do we need application insight? So suppose user complain checkout page slow because VM CPU looks normal, database looks healthy, network is healthy. So question arise, where is the delay? Application
Mm.
insight identify the slow API, failed dependency,
Okay.
log SQL query, and external service delay. Okay.
Okay.
So application insight architectures look like, let me write here for you so you have a note. Application insight architecture flow look like, it starts from users and goes to application, then it goes to application insights,
Insights, yeah.
then it goes to what?
Advice.
Azure Monitor.
A monitor. Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Okay. So now data is collected. So application insight automatically collect the request duration, response time, expectation, exceptions, fail request dependency, and available ability. Okay. Now, so there another there another things which is Azure Advisor. Okay. So what is Azure Advisor? So Azure Advisor is Azure recommendation engine. It analyzes your environment and provide the best practices, optimized recommendations. Okay. So Azure Advisor categories are, which is basically provide the recommendation for reliability, security, performance, cost, operational excellence. Okay. And what are the reliability recommendations? So it would be like use the ability zone, enable the backup, configure the site recovery. And what are the security recommendations? So it recommend they enable the MFA, enable the defender, close open ports. And what are the performance recommendations? So resize the virtual machine, optimize the storage, improve the database performance. And what is the cost recommendation? So it recommend shut down the ideal virtual machine,
Oh,
purchase the reserved instances, and delete the unused resource. Simple. So we have operational excellence, which improve the monitoring, configure the alerts, and enable the diagnosis. Okay. And what is the Microsoft Defender for Cloud? So Microsoft Defender for Cloud is cloud security posture management, which is CSPM. Okay, let me write here. Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So it is cloud security, okay, posture management, which is called CSPM. Okay, plus what? Cloud workload protection, which is CWPP, and it continues accesses the Azure resources. Okay. So what does it do? So it provides the security recommendation, threat detections, regular compliance, vulnerability assessment, and secure scores. And what are the secure scores? So one of the most important interview topic, like secure score measure the overall security postures. For example, secure scores is 82. So higher scores mean better security postures. Okay. And what are the recommendation for it? So enable the MFA, encrypt this storage, update VM, enable the endpoint protection. So each environment and each improvement increase the secure score. Okay. Now, what is threat protection? So defender detect the malware, suspicious login, network attacks, brute force attempt, and vulnerabilities. And what is the Azure policy? So Azure policy is enforce the organization standard automatically. And why do we need policy? So without governance, developer create encrypted storage, wrong regions, public IPs, large expensive virtual machines, which result the compliance issue, security risks, and higher costs. But
Mm.
so Azure policy architecture start from organization policy, then goes to Azure policy, and then goes to Azure resource. Okay. So resource must be comply. Okay. Now, what are the common mistakes? So common mistakes are ignoring the advisor recommendations, never reviewing the secure score, no Azure policy, hard coding governance manually, monitoring infrastructure but not applications, and no compliance strategy. Okay. And what are the best practices? So use application insight for the applications, use Azure Monitor for the infrastructures, enable the Microsoft Defender for cloud, review the secure score regularly, and apply Azure policy at management group level, and use Azure advisor monthly and continuously improve the governance. And what are the exam 305 perspectives look like? So let's take scenario one. If needed detailed application performance monitoring, then answer will be application insight. If scenario 2 asks need for Azure best practices recommendation, then answer will be Azure Advisor. And if the scenario looks like need continuous security posture assessment, then answer will be Microsoft Defender for a cloud. And if the scenario looks like need to prevent the deployment of the resource outside the approved regions, then answer will be your Azure policy, which is deny effect. And if the scenario look like need automatically deployment of the monitoring extensions if missing, then answer will be Azure policy. Okay. Now, so monitoring tell us what is happening. Okay. But application insight explain how our application behave from the user perspective. So it provide deep visibility, okay, into application performance and distributed sorry transactions. So Azure Advisor act like a cloud consultant, continuously recommending the improvement in the reliability, okay, in security, okay, in performance, in cost and operational excellence. Okay. So Microsoft
Okay.
Defender for cloud strength and organization security posture by identifying the vulnerabilities, detecting the threat, measuring the security maturities through this secure score. So Azure Policy is the one of the most important governance tool available to the Azure Architect or Cloud Architect. Instead of relying on the manual process, policy automatically enforce the organization standard across the subscription and the management group. Okay.
Next one.
Now, yeah. So now let's move to another subtopic, which is designing Azure management group. There is RBAC, resource logs, tag, Azure blueprints. Okay. So in our
Okay.
last topic, we learned Azure Application Insight, Azure Advisor, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Secure Score, and Azure Policy. So monitoring help us to detect the issues. Defender help us to secure workload. Azure Policy enforce these standards. But large enterprise face another challenges. Imagine a company with the 500 Azure subscriptions, 20 business
Yes.
units, and thousands of developer and 1 lakh plus Azure resources. So question arise: who can create resources, who can delete production's virtual machine, how do we organize subscription, how do we prevent the accidental deletion, and how do we apply governance across the enterprise. So Azure provide governance service to solve this problem. So imagine you
Okay.
are Azure architect for a multinational bank. Azure environment include the development, testing, production, disaster recovery, and sandbox. So thousands of the engineers work daily. Without governance, wrong permissions, accidental deletions, inconsistent
Yeah.
naming, security risks, and compliance issues. So Azure governance service provide the centralized control. And what are the Azure
Yeah.
governance hierarchy? So it starts from tenant, then management group, then subscription, then resource group, then resources. Let me write here
Yeah.
Azure Azure governance hierarchy. So it starts from tenant, then goes to management group, then goes to subscription. Okay, then goes to resource group, then goes to resource. Okay,
Okay.
now what are the management group? So management groups provide the centralized governance for the multiple Azure subscriptions. Okay, and why use management groups? So instead of sorry, configuring the subscription 1, subscription 2, subscription 3, and so on individually, configure the management group, and into that all subscription are live. One policy apply everywhere. Okay,
Hmm.
so what is the benefit? So its benefit is centralized governance, policy inheritance, and RBAC inheritance, and enterprise skills. And what is the Azure rollback access control, which is RBAC? So what is RBAC? So RBAC control who can do what on Azure resource. Okay, like authentication versus authorization. So which is very commonly asked question. Okay, so authentications who are you, and authorizations what can you do.
And you?
Okay, so
Yes.
RBAC handle authorizations. So RBAC architectures start from users, then go to Azure AD, or today we call intra ID, and then Azure RBAC role and Azure resources. And what are the RBAC components? So RBAC consists of security principle, role definition, scope. And what are the security principle? It can be user, group, service principle, or major identity. And what is the role definitions? So role, so it's defined the permissions. For example, reader, contributor, owner, and user access administrator. And what are the scopes? So it's defined where the permission apply. Okay, and scopes include the management group, subscriptions, resource group, and resources. And what is built in role? So it can be reader, which can view resource but cannot modify or delete. Contributor can create, modify, and delete resource but cannot assign the Arabic role. And what is owner? Can full resource management assign role highest administrative permissions. And user access administrator can manage the Arabic assignment without full resource ownership. Okay, so RBAC best practices are apply the least privilege principle. For example, developer give permission developer to contributor, auditor to reader, security term to security specific role, and avoid assigning the owner role unnecessarily. Okay,
Okay.
now what is the common mistakes?
Hmm.
Okay, so common mistakes are everyone assign owner role, no tagging strategy, no management groups, no resource logs, and manual governance, and no compliance review. And what is the
Hmm.
best practices? So best practices is organize subscription using the management group. Okay, apply Azure policy at management group. Okay, use RBAC with the least privilege. protect productions resource with the resource locks, enforce the mandatory tags, and continuously review the permission and automate the governance through the infrastructure as a code. Okay. Now let's take some exam scenario questions, which will be look like what? So if scenario asks need to apply governance across the 100 Azure subscription, then answer will be management group. If the scenario is developers should manage the resource but not assign permission, then answer is contributor role. And if the
Okay.
scenario is auditor require read only access, then answer will be reader role. And if the scenario looks like it prevent the accidental deletion of the production database, then answer will be cannot delete the resource log. And if the scenario look like in which the every resource must include the environment and the cost center metadata, then answer will be your Azure tag plus Azure policy. Okay. And if the scenario look like there is a need to block the deployment outside the approved Azure regions, then answer will be Azure policy at management group level. Okay. So governance is what perform a collection of the Azure resources into the manageable enterprise cloud platform.
Okay.
Without governance, cloud environment quickly become the inconsistent, insecure, and expensive.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
management group provide a centralized control across the subscriptions, RBAC, ensure the user have only the permissions they need. Resource log protect the critical infrastructure, and tag enable the organization automations and cost tracking. So
Yeah.
one important exam point is that Azure blueprint are now considered legacy. For new deployment, Azure recommended the combination Azure policy with the infrastructure as a code such as APM template or bicep to achieve the same governance objective. So as an Azure architect, our goal is not only to build the secure and scalable environment, but also to ensure they remain governed, compliant, and operationally efficient throughout their life cycle. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
congratulations, excellent work. Today we completed one of the final and most important AZ-305 domain having the designing, monitoring, observability, governance, and operation excellence. So this domain represents what Azure architecture do after infrastructure is deployed. So building Azure
Right.
infrastructure is only the beginning. Okay. Operating it successfully for the years is real challenge. So today topics ensure the Azure environment remains secure, governed, observable, cost optimized, reliable, and compliant. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this brings us to the end of this session and the core of AZ-305 courses. Okay. So throughout the
Yeah.
journey, we have learned not only the Azure services but also to think like Azure or cloud solution architect.
Yes.
And the most important takeaway is an Azure solution architect is not measured by the how many Azure resources they know, but by how effectively they choose the right service to solve a business problem while balancing the security, reliability, performance, operation, excellence, and cost. Okay. So before
Yeah.
taking AZ-30 certifications, revise these high value comparison topic like Azure Monitor versus Azure Application Insight, Azure Policy versus RBAC, Azure Backup versus Azure Site Recovery, Ability Sets, Ability Zones, Load Balancer, Load Front Door. Okay, so
Okay.
so yeah,
It's
thank you for
good.
learning with me today. We will see you next
Yeah.
session.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. It's becoming interesting. I'm beginning to see like real life scenarios
Mm-hmm.
with all these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
okay.
so much.
So okay. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Take care. We will see
Bye.
you tomorrow. Okay. Bye.
Bye.